Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Charlene Aaron. Today, Democrats on the defensive as they fall farther behind in the polls for the midterm elections. Democrats on the defensive. Another reason Democrats are concerned about their chances for keeping the Senate. Pennsylvania candidate John Fetterman's rocky performance in his debate.
I may not get every word the right way, but I will always do the right thing in Washington, D.C.
Meanwhile, Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker is facing another charge that he paid for a woman's abortion nearly 30 years ago.
I'm done with this foolishness. I've already told people this is a lie.
And abortion will be on the ballot in many states as voters will decide what the rules in their state will be.
By removing any restrictions, which is what they want to do in Michigan, it's also what they want to do in California, along with some other things, it basically makes it a free-for-all.
He's the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and a very strong supporter of Israel. We'll take a look at the economic mess Rishi Sunak has to try to clean up in the UK. Jews and Christians coming together to fulfill the biblical mandate to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
To fulfill the biblical mandate of Psalm 122:6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, recognizing that peace in Jerusalem signifies peace for the world.
And a major victory for religious freedom and free speech in the United Kingdom, in a case involving Evangelist Franklin Graham. Those stories and more today on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with Democrats on the defensive as a range of polls show many of their candidates losing ground to their Republican opponents. A major worry, the performance by Democratic Senate candidate John Fetterman in his debate against Republican Mehmet Oz Tuesday night. Fetterman, the state's lieutenant governor, struggled to complete sentences and jumbled words throughout the hour-long debate, which came 5 months after his stroke.
I may not get every word the right way, but I will always do the right thing in Washington, D.C.
Polls have shown the race extremely close, as are many others, although Republicans have been consistently moving up in many races, threatening Democratic control of the Senate. In another close race in Georgia, a second woman has come forward accusing Herschel Walker of encouraging and paying for her 1993 abortion.
I'm done with this foolishness. I've already told people this is a lie, and I'm not going to entertain to continue to carry a lie alone.
That accusation came just weeks after a former girlfriend said that Walker did the same thing for her in 2009. And many Democrats have focused on abortion in their campaigns, but inflation and crime have been the top concerns for voters. But at the state level, abortion is still a key issue. This November, the midterms will feature multiple statewide votes relating to abortion after the Supreme Court's ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. The proposals vary wildly from state to state, with advocates keeping a close eye on how the voting shakes out. CBN's Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka has the story.
Abortion is on the ballot in November. It's the battle cry we've heard from both sides for different reasons as we head into the midterm elections. The issue is expected to drive voter turnout, but in some states, voters will have a direct hand in deciding how much access or how little they'd have to the procedure where they live. In addition to candidates, 5 states, California, Montana, Michigan, Vermont, and Kentucky, will have different abortion proposals on their midterm ballots. Voters in California, Michigan, and Vermont will decide on whether to have the right to an abortion added to their state constitutions. Kelly Lester with And Then There Were None Ministries says her biggest concern is how regulated or unregulated the procedure might become in some of the states.
By removing any restrictions, which is what they want to do in Michigan, it's also what they want to do in California, along with some other things, it basically makes it a free-for-all. And so there will be no inspections of abortion facilities. There will be no mandates on what level of care the women are getting at these locations. And so it really is a very, very dangerous thing.
If approved, the Kentucky amendment would stop the state from, quote, securing or protecting the right to abortion or require funding of an abortion. And in Montana, the Born Alive referendum would provide legal rights to infants, including those born alive after an abortion. It could put doctors on the hook for felony charges.
We refuse to accept a future
Following the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade, the country saw how abortion could be a political weapon in the midterm election cycle. In August, Kansas voters rejected a proposed amendment that would have limited abortion access in the deeply red state. The Human Coalition's Chelsea Yeoman doesn't believe that result is a sign of things to come.
Kansas was a really unique situation where the wording on the ballot was confusing. You had tens of millions of dollars pouring in, Planned Parenthood going door to door. So I don't think that's indicative of American sentiment. I think Americans understand that humans in the womb are alive and that they are human, and overall that some life should be protected.
The outcome could end up being a patchwork of rules nationwide because federal proposals on both sides of the aisle regarding the procedure will likely not have enough votes to pass. It's why some pro-choice Democrats believe the statewide measures are important.
The Democrats are for codifying Roe. We have a bill that's passed the House. It's passed hopefully will pass the Senate. The Republicans, as you know, with Lindsey Graham, want to have a ban, and they're debating how many weeks to have that ban. Let me say this. I mean, my guess is many of your viewers will disagree with my view on abortion. I think it is a fundamental right for women to make that decision with their doctor. We can agree to disagree, and the question in this country is how can we start having conversations, being true to our ideals and principles, but still finding common ground.
Voter registration data would indicate that Democrats have made some gains, especially with women, since the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. But other polling would indicate that abortion is ranked in the middle of the pack, behind things like inflation, the economy, and crime when it comes to reasons why voters are being driven to the polls. What does that all mean? Well, it means that all eyes will be on results as they start to roll in on Election Day in November. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Turning overseas to the United Kingdom, the new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak brings an impressive resume to his new job, along with a Hindu faith. And he has said that he supports moving Israel's capital to Jerusalem. But his top priority is dealing with an economy facing serious challenges. Dale Hurd has that story.
While Rishi Sunak will be the first Hindu Prime Minister of officially Christian Great Britain, that's been almost a non-issue in a nation in desperate need of a competent leader.
Prime Minister.
Sunak is the fifth Prime Minister in the past 6 years, and there's hope that this one will succeed.
I think financially knows what he's doing to run the country.
He will be able to sort us out. I think he's been in the right sort of jobs to understand all the intricacies of what needs to be done.
You do need somebody who's going to have courage to change everything and to shake everything up.
Rishi Sunak is described as a proud Hindu who has taken the oath as a member of Parliament on the Hindu holy book, the Bhagavad Gita. As finance minister, Sunak lit candles outside number 10 Downing Street for the Hindu festival of Diwali. He's the wealthiest leader in the democratic world. He and his wife are worth around $1 billion. Sunak has voiced strong support for Israel, saying Jerusalem is undisputably the historic capital of the Jewish state, and there's a very strong case for moving Britain's embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. He is also opposed to the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement against Israel, and has spoken out strongly against anti-Semitism. As for the United States, there are strong ties. Sunak met his wife as a student at Stanford University, and he held a U.S. green card until last year. Sunak's experience at Goldman Sachs in helping run a hedge fund will be useful as he inherits an economic mess of high inflation, low growth, and soaring energy prices. Some citizens are refusing to pay their utility bills. And when his predecessor, Liz Truss, offered what some believe was a good plan to revive the economy, the markets bucked against it, and the pound crashed to a record low.
It is just very, very difficult for anyone to both reassure the markets and deliver growth at this point. The two are working against each other.
If elections were held today in Britain, the Conservative Party would be wiped out. A recent poll showed the Labour Party holding a 33-point lead. Sunak has 2 years to turn that around and fix Britain's problems before the next election.
As long as he can muster a majority in a vote of confidence in the House of Commons, he will stay as Prime Minister. As to whether he can survive that, again, governments depend on the confidence only of one thing, which is not the opinion polls or even the markets, but the votes in the House of Commons.
Sunak is described as the least unpopular leader of a very unpopular party. And at 42, he's the youngest Prime Minister since Lord Liverpool in 1812. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
And just a reminder for our viewers, if you miss an episode of NewsWatch, you can still catch it on YouTube. You can find it by just typing in CBN NewsWatch Today in the YouTube search box, and you can see older episodes as well. Coming up, while the economy is the main issue in this year's elections, many voters are also concerned about what some call left-wing wokeism. So will there be a pushback against woke culture at the ballot box? We'll hear what one media analyst says when we come back. Well, polls are predicting a red wave is coming November the 8th as Americans choose who they want to represent them in Congress and in the states. So is left-wing cultural wokeism about to die once and for all, or will it rise again after suffering only a temporary setback? Appearing on this week's episode of The Global Lane, conservative producer, media influencer, and promoter A.J. Rice says he's expecting a big pushback against woke culture this election cycle. Okay, also on tonight's Global Lane program, a look at how much Americans may be paying to heat their homes this winter. And pollster George Barna reveals the issues of greatest concern to American voters as they prepare to cast their ballots in the upcoming election. Watch these stories and more on the Global Lane tonight on the CBN News Channel at 8:30 Eastern or on the CBN News app. Still ahead, Christians and Jews around the world coming together for a day of prayer for the peace of Jerusalem. We'll bring you that story when we come back. And we're sorry we didn't have that story about wokeism in our culture. We had some technical difficulties with that. Our apologies about that. But earlier this month, Christians and Jews around the world came together to follow a biblical command. As Chris Mitchell reports, it's all about praying for Jerusalem.
Shalom and welcome everybody to Jerusalem, Israel.
This celebration marks the latest International Day of Prayer for the Peace of Jerusalem. Since 2004, this event has joined millions of Christians and Jews around the world to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
To fulfill the biblical mandate of Psalm 122:6, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, recognizing that peace in Jerusalem signifies peace for the world. And so the day of prayer gathers and empowers Christians around the world to stand in alliance with that promise of God in Psalm 122:6.
Bishop Robert Stearns helped start this effort and says Jerusalem is central to God's plan for the world.
Jerusalem is a plumb line. Jerusalem is a place of covenantal alignment. As goes Jerusalem, as goes Israel, so goes much of our world. And so when we focus in this moment that is both filled with difficulty and promise, let's look at this. We have increased negative attacking rhetoric from Iran, from Syria. We've got all kinds of problems there. But through the Abraham Accords, we have amazing new opportunities for peace. So we have to pray that humanity moves in the direction of peace that has been promised to this land and to this region.
The day brings Jews and Christians together.
The International Day for Prayer for the Peace of Jerusalem is a very important day in the calendar. It codifies the blessing and command to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. What Eagles Wings has done by adding another holiday into the Christian calendar is really unbelievable. And here in Jerusalem, we celebrate it together with our Christian brothers.
Stearns says a younger generation is catching the vision of the importance to pray for Jerusalem.
Being a younger man myself, I'm just excited to help inspire others to come and see what is happening here in Israel, to not only come and view it, but take an active role in it. We're here to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We want to loudly and proudly tell the world that we want to stand with Israel. We want to stand with God in seeing the peace come about here in the land.
It's important that the church in the nations wake up to the fact that God called them in the scriptures to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. He didn't say that about any other city.
Prayer leader Rick Riding says, given these perilous times, it's important to stand with Israel.
It's always intense here, but right now with the threats, very existential threats coming from Iran, and the relationships that seem to be developing more strongly between Iran and Russia, there's a real serious need for prayer for the peace of Jerusalem and of Israel.
Riding says this also sends a strong message to the Jewish people that they are not alone.
I was just talking to a Jewish man here, and he said, I had no idea there were 150 million Christians in China and that many of them are praying for Israel. This is phenomenal. And so it also is helping the people of Israel to realize when they feel so rejected in the media that there are people who love them and stand with them. And it really gives a lot of courage to the people of Israel to hear about this prayer from all over the world for them.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the day of prayer for the peace of Jerusalem.
Here at home, Americans continue to face sticker shock at the grocery store. One factor driving up food prices is a shortage of farm workers. Congress is now debating a bill that could provide a solution. Heather Sells explains.
Food prices have jumped more than 11% in the last year. It is the fastest rate in 4 decades, and farm labor is part of the equation.
I haven't had a domestic worker in the field for 12, 14 years. They just won't do it.
Rod Parker oversees 2,000 acres of vegetable production here in Virginia, and although he advertises, he says it seems impossible to get local help.
We have 60 guys here. There's not 60 guys or 60 men in Virginia that will do this like they do it. That'll come and work and be here at 5 o'clock and start and work till the job's done, no matter what time it is.
Parker has relied on the government's foreign guest worker program, known as H-2A, for years. It allows U.S. farmers to hire overseas workers for seasonal help.
It's not easy, it's not cheap, but it's stable.
The H-2A program began in the late 1980s, and it is essential for many growers. Parker needs workers to hand harvest his broccoli and squash. By law, he provides housing, covers their transportation from Mexico, and pays a government-set hourly wage plus extra for each box. That motivates many to literally run through the fields to keep their numbers high. The problem, many farmers are not as fortunate as Parker in finding the help. Cato Institute analyst David Beer follows the trend.
Right now, we're poised to import more food from abroad than produce it here at home. And one of the major reasons for that change is the fact that it's more difficult to get U.S. workers to do manually intensive farm labor than ever. The unemployment rate is near a record low for agriculture right now. And U.S. farmers are really hurting to find the workers they need to be able to produce the goods and services that Americans want to consume.
Requests for these workers continue to spike, with some 500,000 expected next year. And this labor shortage is behind part of the jump in food prices. Parker says 20% of his price for broccoli goes towards labor. Add to that rising fertilizer and transportation costs, growing drought conditions, plus the war in Ukraine, and it's no wonder food is so expensive. One possible solution, a bill in Congress that would reform the H-2A guest worker program. Advocates say it would streamline the process and expand the program to include year-round workers. That could change the game for dairy and livestock farmers. It would also establish a path to citizenship for longtime workers.
Right now, the Senate is divided about how to proceed with the program and with immigration in general.
While it passed the House last year with bipartisan support, the Senate still has not been able to reach consensus. If lawmakers can solve the farm labor shortage, they will help to keep groceries stocked and food prices down. That could be a political win for both sides of the aisle. Reporting in Colonial Beach, Virginia, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Coming up, a major victory for Franklin Graham and religious freedom in the United Kingdom. We'll tell you about that case when we come back. Stay with us. Evangelist Franklin Graham scored a major religious freedom victory this week. A Scottish court issued a stern ruling claiming that his organization was treated unfairly and unequally. The Sheriff's Court in Glasgow found that Graham and his organization, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, were discriminated against when a ministry event was canceled in 2020. He awarded the Graham Evangelistic Association nearly $110,000 in damages. Those opposing Graham's appearance said that he might make homophobic and Islamophobic statements. The sheriff said he found no evidence of that, and while protesting is permitted, he wrote there's no right to silence or stop religious assemblies. Graham was grateful for the ruling, calling it a clear victory for freedom of speech and religion in the UK. And you can find out more about this case and other attacks against Franklin Graham in the United Kingdom on CBNnews.com. And that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with CBNnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next time. Have a terrific day. God bless.